In this tutorial, we're going to build a project called Laravel, an application that allows users to upload their images. To give you a better understanding of the project, here I'm going to show you a Bootstrap 5 template that we'll be integrating into our app. We'll see some images on the home page. We use the Masonry plugin to place the images in optimal positions based on available vertical space. If we click on an image, we'll see another page that displays a single large image. It also contains some information about the author that uploaded the image. Here we see a button to like the image, another one to mark the image as a favorite image, and another one to download the image. We can also see other information about the image, such as the dimension of the image, when the user uploaded the image, and so on. Below that, we can see some tags that are related to this image. Below the large image, we can see some related images, and another feature that allows other users to comment on the image. We'll also build another page to manage images. On this page, users can list their images, search images, upload an image, edit the image, and delete the image. Now, in this section, we'll build basic CRUD functionalities for our app. We'll see how to integrate this template in another section after learning about the blade component. And we will add other features later on. Okay, enough talking. Let's move on to the next video and start building our project.
Let's start building our app by creating a new Laravel project. Let's go ahead to our terminal, then type Laravel new. Then I'll call it Laravel. Let's hit enter to create our Laravel project and download the dependencies for our project. I'll come back when it's finished. Once it's finished, let's change the directory into our new project. Cd Laravel. Then run php artisan serve to start up the PHP build server. Once it's running, you can go to your browser, then access localhost /8000. However, since I use Valet, I can stop this server. Then in my browser, I can access my Laravel project, Laravel, followed by test. Now, if we open our app in the code editor, then open the .env file, here we'll see the db_database has been set to Laravel, and we'll see the db_username set to root. Ideally, that's all you need. However, in my local machine, I have set up the password for the root. So I'll enter it here. Alright, now let's create a new database for our Laravel app. Feel free to use any MySQL client tool that you like, but in my case, I'll go to terminal, then type mysql-u root-p, since I have password set up in my machine, then -e, double quotes opening, create database Laravel, double quotes closing, and then hit enter. Then I'll enter my password. Okay, once the database is created, let's verify if our database credentials is properly set up by running php artisan migrate :install. Okay, migration table created successfully, meaning that our database setting is properly set up. Alright, I'll see you in the next video. In this video, we're gonna create a database table using migration, where we'll place all image information of our app in that table. Let's open up our terminal. Then, to create a new migration, we can use php artisan make :migration, then specify the migration name, or we can simply use php artisan make model specify the model name, image, then add -m flag. This will tell Laravel Artisan to create an image model as well as a new migration for that model. Okay, model and migration created successfully. Now let's open up the create image migration. If we take a look at the migration class, it's a bit different from the prior version that you may see, but I think it's not a big deal. It's something called anonymous migration, and it's just a way of how Laravel prevents migration class name collisions. Anyway, let's jump to app method. Here after ID, let's define a string column to store the image title. Let's make this column nullable, because when users upload an image, they do not need to fill in the title. Just choose an image on their computer. Then we'll add some other string columns. Just duplicate that. This one would be slug, and it's gonna be unique. And then file, then dimension. For these two columns, we don't need the nullable. That means they are required. Then we'll add a column to store how many times the image is viewed. We'll use an unsigned integer. The column name will be views count, and we'll give it a default value of 0. Let's duplicate this line, and it will be downloads count. As the name suggests, this column will record how many times the image is downloaded. Next, let's add a Boolean column. And we'll call it is published. And we'll give it a default value to false. As the name suggests, we'll use the column to determine if the image is published. Then, we'll need to link this table with users table. In this case, we'll add the user_ID column and make it a foreign key. To do that, we can simply add table foreign ID pass the user ID column in, then call constraint, and then on delete cascade. Or we can also call cascade on delete. By doing this way, if for some reason a user data that link to this table is deleted, all images related to that user will also be removed. Alright, let's keep this safe. Switch back over to our terminal. Then run PSP artisan migrate. Okay, migration tables created successfully. Let me verify the table in SQL Pro. Here I have the images table. If we see the structure, it has ID, title, slug, and so on as defined in the migration file. Let's move on to the next video and see how to seed our images table with the model factory. In this video, we'll see how to seed or programmatically fill the images table with a model factory. Alright, let's open up our terminal, then type php artisan make factory, then specify the factory name, image factory. In the prior Laravel version, we need to specify -m followed by the model name to link the model with the factory. However, since version 8, we do not need doing that way. All we need to do is follow the convention in naming our factory, which is the model class name, in this case image, and suffixing it with factory. Let's hit return. Okay, let's open up the image factory file. Then go to definition method. In this array, let's add title. We'll add to this column a fake sentence using this faker sentence. Since we'll use the same sentence for slug, let's assign it into a variable title. Then we'll add slug. To generate slug from string, we can use slug method from strfacade. Then pass the title to it. Now, Laravel 9 introduced strhelper function, which does the exact same way with strfacade. So here we can replace the str class with str, then followed the slug function call. Then we'll add file, and for now we'll fill this column with a random image URL. We can do that by using this faker image URL. This method will return a random URL from placeholder.com. We can specify in the first argument the image width. Then, in the second argument, we set the image height. Let's assign these values in variables to use them in dimension column. So here, dimension, and we'll set it with width, join with x, and join with height. Let's also add views count, and we'll give it a random integer number using faker random number, then specify how many digits it will generate the number. In my case, 5. Let's do almost the same thing for downloads count. Next, let's specify is published column, and we'll give it a value true. And lastly, we'll add user_id, and we'll call user factory. By doing this way, it will create a user first before actually creating the image, then return the ID of the created user to the user ID column, and then create the image. Okay, don't forget to import the user namespace. Alright, let's give this a save. And now, let's run our model factory. Back to our terminal. Then open Tinker by saying php artisan tinker. So here, I will demonstrate how to generate data using factory, just in case you forget. If I say image factory, then call make method, he will get back an image instance. However, if you see in our database, we'll get nothing. If I now call CRUD method, I'll get back another image instance. And if I see in my database, now I have one image. Okay, now let me create 3 images. I can do that by calling the count method before the create method call. Then pass in the number. Or we can give the number in the factory model, and we no longer need to call the count method. And now I have 7 images on the table. We can also override one or more columns by specifying an array containing key value pairs. Let's say I want to override the slug with my awesome image, and this published as false. Hit return, and here I have an image with slug, my awesome image, and is published is false. Okay, to make seeding our database tables much easier, let's open up database seeder file. Then here in run method, we call image factory, specify the number, 6 in my case, then call CRUD method. Don't forget to import the image namespace. Let's give it a save, switch back to our terminal. Then we can reset our database by running php artisan migrate :fresh -seed. Okay, it created the migration table successfully, and database seeding was completed successfully. And here I have 6 images in images table. Alright, let's move on to the next video and see how to work with file storage.
In the last video, we've seen how to seed or populate our images table programmatically with fake data using the model factory. Here I have 6 images with different values, except dimension in each row, which is fine. However, if we copy the URL and paste it into the browser, here we'll get a simple image that contains a background color and a random text. So, in this video, we're going to replace the file column with the actual file path and replace the dimension column with the file's actual size. Here I provided 6 images that I grabbed from unsplash.com. You can download the images in the course resource, or you may find other images on your own. So, to do that, we'll be utilizing Laravel file storage to make working with files and directories much easier. Alright, let's firstly open up the .env file. Then, let's find file system disk. In the prior version it was file system driver. By default, it's set to local. and we'll change it to public so that all images can be accessed publicly. Give that a save, then go to our terminal. Here you can execute PHP artisan storage :link to create a symbolic link from storage path to public path. However, since I use sail, which is a lightweight command line interface for interacting with Laravel's default Docker development environment, here I'll replace the PHP command with the sail command. So if you're watching me using sail and you're not using it, then you can replace it with PHP. Now, we'll put our images in Images folder and organize them by year, month, and date. And we'll make them dynamic, which means if users upload images on October 10, 2022, their images will be stored in images/2022/10/10. So now let's open Tinker, sail artisan Tinker. Then, to create a directory, we can use storage make directory, then pass in the directory path, in this case, images. Now, to create a dynamic subfolder, we can simply use the phpDate function. So here, let's assign into a variable, let's say, subfolder. We can then call the makeDirectory method, then pass the directory path, images, /, then join with the subfolder. As you can see, now we have subfolder images, 2022, etc. I think we will need this command to create directory before users upload image. So let's grab these command. And a good place is to place it in the image model. So let's open up that file. Then define a static method. We'll name it with the same name, makeDirectory. Paste the code. Let's also copy this one. Don't forget to import the storage namespace. Let's cut this and paste it here, and return the subfolder. Okay, now let's copy the images I have provided for you. Then paste them in here. Back to Tinker. And here, we can list all files inside a folder by calling storage all files. In this case, we'll show all files in the images folder. And here, we get back an array containing the path of our images. With that, we can go back to our editor. Pull open the database seeder file. Then, in the run method, we call storage all files, images, then assign into a variable, images. Before we forget, let's import the storage namespace. After that, we loop through each image using for each loop. Then, we move the image factory into for each body. Remove the number, since we want to create only one image in each iteration. Then, we'll replace the file column with the image. Since I use Mac, I will ignore the .ds store file, like so. Let's give this a save. Back to terminal. Exit from Tinker. Then type sail, artisan, migrate, fresh, --seed. Alright, let's take a look at our database. Okay, here we have a different file path for each image. Great. One last thing that we need to do is to fix this static dimension. Since we now have the actual file in our app, we can now get the file and calculate the dimension. To do that, let's go back to our terminal. Then open Tinker once again. Let's call the allFiles method one more time. Then assign them to a variable, files. Now, let's take one file from the files array. Then pass it to the storage path. Here we get back the actual path. Let's now save it in another variable, file. Now, to get the image dimension, we can utilize the PHP getImageSize function. Then pass the file path. And here we get back an array containing some information about the image. The first two items are the image dimension that we need. So with that, let's go back to the database seeder file. Then define a new method. And we'll call it getDimension. It accepts an argument, image. Inside the method, we'll call the PHP getImageSize function. Then pass to it the path method from the storage facade and pass the image in. Remember that this function returns an array in which the first two items is image dimension. So here, we can destructure that array, like so. By doing this way, the first element of the array will be stored in the width variable, while the second element of the array will be stored in the height variable. After that, we can return them like so. Okay, now we can go back to the run method. Then, we override the dimension column by calling this getDimension and pass the image in. Now let's give this a save. Close the Tinker and rerun the migration and seed again. Okay, now let me see in SQL Ace. Now we have a dynamic image dimension that is grabbed from the file in the file column. Before we end this video, let's go back to the database seeder file. And here, we may use this method not only here, but also when users upload an image. So let's cut this method declaration. Then pull open the image model. Paste it in here. Then change the method accessor to public. We also need the static keyword so that we can access this method without instantiating the model. Back to database seeder one more time. Then replace this with image get dimension. Let's give these a save and rerun the migration in seeder once again. Okay, everything is working just fine. In this video, we're going to load all images from our database and display them on the screen. Alright, let's open up our terminal. Then create a new controller by saying sail, artisan, make, controller, image controller. Okay, now let's pull open the image controller. Then define a new method. Public function index. Inside the method, we grab all images, image, published, latest, paginate, 15. And then we assign into a variable, images. Don't forget to import the image namespace. Note that we called published method, which does not exist in Eloquent model. What we'll do here is to define that as local scope in image model. For now, let's return a view, image index, and pass in the images. Next, let's open up the image model, then define the published method as local scope. Remember that defining local scope should be prefixed with scope. So scope, published, and it also receive an argument, query, which represents Eloquent Builder instance. Inside the method body, we scope a query to only include the published images. Next, let's navigate to Resources, Views folder. In there, let's create a new folder. Then, inside the folder, we create a new file and call it index.blade.php. Inside the file, let's add a heading, and we'll say, all images. Then, we'll loop through all images using for-each loop. Images as image. Inside that, we add a div. Then, inside the div, we add an anchor element. For now, just ignore the href attribute. Inside that anchor, we display the image by adding an image element. We'll set the src attribute with image file, while alt attribute would be image title. Last, let's define a new route for our image controller. Let's open up web.php, then modify this route. The first argument will be the same. We'll change the second argument to array image controller class, comma, index. Let's also give our route a name, images.index. Now, if we give this a save and go to our browser, here we don't see any image being displayed on the screen. If we open Window Inspector, we know that we need to fix the sources of our images. So, let's go back to our editor. Then go back to Image Model. In here, let's define a new method. Let's say file URL. Inside the method body, we can return the actual URL of the image by saying return storage URL, then pass in this file. Okay, back to our view. Then replace this with file URL. Also, let's adjust the image width by adding the width attribute and set it with, let's say, 300. This is a temporary solution though, since we only have the original file. What we should do here is to show the smaller size of the file instead of the large size, and display it in here. However, we'll do that later on. Let's give these a save and have a look. Okay, now we have our images displayed on the screen. Great. Let's move on to the next video and see how to make this image clickable and take us to another page to show us a single large image.
In the last video, we have seen how to load all images from our database and display them on the screen. In this video, we're going to display a single large image on the screen. At this point, each images point to the current page. So what we're going to do here is make them working property, so that when users click on an image, they will see a new page displaying the large image. Alright, let's open up our editor. And now, let's start by creating a new route for showing the detail of the image. Let's open up the web.php file. Then add route. Route get. For the route path, it will be /images curly braces image :slug. Remember that, by doing this way, we perform route model binding and we use slug column instead of ID column. In the second argument, we describe the controller and method that we will be using. In this case, image controller and then show method. And we'll also give this route a name as images.show. Alright, let's now pull open the image controller. Then define the show method. It receives an argument, image, and we type hint it with the image model. Inside the method body, we return a view image.show and pass to it the image instance. Okay, next, let's navigate to Resources, Views, Image, then create a new file. We name it show.blade.php. For now, let's add a heading 1. Then display the image title. Then we'll add an image element. and do the same thing as we did before in the index blade PHP. Now, let's reopen the index blade PHP. Then in here, we need to change the href attribute of this anchor element. The common way is to call route, then specify the route name, which should be fine. However, I want to abstract that route in the model layer. That way is much easier and will make our view much cleaner. So, let's open up the image model. Then define a new method. Let's say link. Or maybe permalink. Inside the method, we return the route. Specify the route name, images.show, then pass in the slug. Now, let's go back to index blade PHP. Then change the href value to image permalink. Let's give these a save. And have a look. Reload the page. Let's click on an image. Okay, here we see a large image displayed on the screen. Also, here in the browser address bar, we see a pretty URL that is the link to access the image. Now, what if for some reason users change their image to draft? So let's copy this slug. Then go to our database. Let's find image by slug. And paste the slug here. I'll change this column to 0. Back to my browser. And reload. As you can see here, we can still access the image although we have made it as draft. So how can we solve this? To solve that, let's open up the web.php file. Then remove the slug from this route parameter. Next, let's open up the route service provider file. So, it's in app provider. Then, in the boot method, let's do explicit model binding. Inside the function, we return the image, where slug is equal with value. Then call published query scope, and then call first or fail. If we give this a save, and have a look, reload the page. Okay, now I get 404 error page, which is the expected page. And if I go back to previous page, then see another image. Oops, I get unexpected error page. Let me see. I forgot to return it here. Now I get expected result. Let me go back to the previous image. It's now working as expected. That's it for this lesson. I'll see you in the next lesson.
In this video, we're going to see how to create a form for uploading images. We'll see how to upload the actual file and persist the image into the database in the next video. Alright, let's open up the web.php file. Then define two brand new routes, one for showing the form and another for handling file uploading. You might define a resourceful route for the image controller, but for me, at least for now, I'll define them manually. So let's duplicate this show route, then remove the second segment. We'll be using image controller, and we'll replace the method and its name to create. Let's duplicate one more time. We'll be using the post HTTP method. And we'll replace the method and its name to store. Now let's pull open the image controller, then define the create and store method. In this create method, we'll return a view image.create. Then let's define a new method, store method in this case, and for now, we'll leave it empty. Next, let's create a form request to validate the request when uploading the image. Open our terminal, then make a new request called image request. Let's open that file. In authorize method, we return true since we don't care about authorization for now. Then, in the rules method, let's specify our requirement for our request. The first one is file. It's required, and it should be an image. Then, the second one is title, and for now, I'll make it nullable. Alright, back to our controller. Then, here in the store method, let's add an argument and type hint it with the image request. Inside the body, let's print out the request data using request all methods. Or we can also use the validated method, which will return the request data that has been validated. I made typo. It should be request. Okay, now let's finally create a form. Let's navigate to Resources, Views, Image. Then create a new blade file. We call it create blade PHP. Inside this file, let's add a heading and say upload new image. Below that, we add a form element. We specify the action attribute which points to route images.store. Then, method attribute is post. And since we'll upload files, we need to adding type attribute multipart form data. Inside the form, we add a CSRF directive to generate a hidden input containing the CSRF token that is required when sending data using the form. Then we add a div. Inside that, we add a label for file, and it's going to be file. After that, we add an input and type of file. We give it a name, file, as we have in the images table. Let's also set the ID attribute with file. Below that, let's show the validation error message for file. We need one input for the title. So, let's duplicate this lines. Let's make multiple selections to file, then replace them with title. Let's adjust the text with capital T, then change the type attribute to text. Now, we want to keep the value of this input when the validation fails. So here we add value attribute, then call Laravel old helper function, then specify the name of the input, in this case title. Lastly, let's add a submit button and it's going to be upload. Now, to show this form, let's provide a link in the image index. Here after heading 1, let's add a link pointing to route images.create. And here we'll say upload image. Alright, let's give these a save. And have a look. Here we see the upload image link. Let's click on that. Okay, here we see the upload new image form displayed on the screen. Let's keep the form empty, then hit the upload button. Okay, here we get an error, the file field is required. Let me now enter a title, then hit the upload button again. We still get the same error, but we're not losing the title. If we now select a file, then hit the upload button again. Okay, here we see the request data printed out. The next thing that we need to do is upload the file and save the file path and title into our database. And we'll do that in the next video. In this video, we're going to learn how to upload the image file to our server, and then save the path of the file as well as the image title into our database. Now, you could put uploading image logic in the controller, or model. But in my opinion, it's better to put that in the form request, or image request to be precise, because handling uploading images is closely related to how we handle the data that comes in from the client. Besides that, our controller would stay lean, because it focuses on interacting with the model and returning the appropriate response. Alright, let's reopen the image request. Then here, let's define a new method. Let's say handle request. Or maybe we'll call it get data. Because we will get the request data after validating it, then merge it with file path once it is successfully uploaded. So here, we call the validated method to return an array containing request data that have been validated. Then assign it into a variable, data. Let's also add to this array another array containing user ID. And we get the current user ID by calling this user ID. However, since we haven't implemented authentication yet, for now, we'll comment out this and set it with 1. Make sure you have that ID in users table. After that, we'll add some logic to handle file upload. But firstly, we'll make sure if the request has a file. Using the hasFile method, then pass in the name, in this case, file. Now, before we actually upload the file, let's make a directory first. We do that by calling image make directory. Remember that this method will create a directory and subdirectory based on the current date. Then return the path of the created directory and subdirectory. So here, let's assign it into a variable, directory. After that, we can upload the file by calling this file store and storing it in the newly created directory. We can then assign the path of the uploaded file into array data, data, file. Next, let's get the image dimension of the uploaded file by calling image get dimension. Then pass to it the file. Let's assign the dimension to data dimension. Lastly, let's return the data array. Actually, this should be public. With that, let's go back to the image controller. Then, in the store method, let's call image create. Then pass to it request get data. After that, we return a redirect response. To the images.index, and we add in session message and say image has been uploaded successfully. Next, let's go to our view. Then show the message from the session. Okay, let's give these a save and have a look. Let's select a file. Then hit the upload button. I get errors. Add file to fillable property to allow mass assignment. Let me go back to my editor. Let me firstly see the file. Okay, here we see in the uploaded file. Now let me open the image model. Here we specify the columns in the fillable attribute. Let's give this another save. Reload. And give it another test. Okay, the image has been uploaded successfully. However, if we take a closer look here, we cannot find our image. This is because we only display all images that have been published. So let's switch over to the image controller. And for now, let's get rid of the publish query scope. Now, if I give this a save, then reload, I get another error. This occurred because our new image has an empty slug. So to fix that, let's switch back over to the image model. Then find the permalink method. Here, we return the actual route if the slug is not empty. Otherwise, we return a hash. Let's give it another save and have a look. Reload the page. Okay, now it is working as before. However, if I click on the last image, it does not work since it has an empty slug. Now, if I click on another image, it's still working just fine. Now, Laravel 9 introduced a new helper for handling redirection. Here we can replace this code with to route. Let's give it a save and have a look. Here we get the same result. Alright, let's move on to the next video and see how to handle the image slug. In the last video, we've successfully added a feature that handles file upload to our application. In this video, we're going to see how to handle the slug of the image. Here in the getData method, let's add another if statement for checking if users supply the title or not. If yes, then we add to data array slug. Then, to create a slug using legacy way is to use str slug and pass to it a string. However, in Laravel 9 we can use str helper, then call the slug method. Actually, let's assign this data title into a variable title. And then here, in the slug method, we pass in the title variable. Or we can put the string in the str function like so. With slug being added, let's now go to image model. Then add it in the fillable attribute. Let's give these a save and take a look. Let's select an image, then enter the title. Let's hit the upload button. Okay, image has been updated successfully. Now let me check in SQL Ace. Here we have a new image added, and the slug column now contains a string that grabs from the column title and replaces all spaces with a dash character. However, there could be a case where a user or different users enter the same title for a different image in some situations. We should get a duplicate entry error if we're using this way, because we have set the slug column as unique. So, to prevent that, let's switch back over to our editor. Go back to the image request. And the very simple way is to suffix the slug with a random number. Maybe using phpTime function like so. However, I don't really like it, so let me undo the last change. Then define a new method. Let's say getSlug, which accepts an argument, title. Now, what we'll do here is to check in the image table if a slug has been taken. If yes, we'll suffix the slug with a number. So, firstly let's define a variable, slug. Then we assign to it str. Pass in the title, then call the slug method. After that, we do a query to match the slug with the slug column in the images table. Then we call the count method to get the number instead of the actual rows. Let's assign it to a new variable. Let's say num_slugs_found. Next, we check if num_slugs_found is greater than 0. Then we return the slug. And we add, after the slug, a dash, and then add num_slugs_found +1. Otherwise, we return the original slug. Okay, now let's jump to the getData method. Then replace this with the getSlug method and pass in the title. Alright, let's save and give it another test. Let me copy the same title from here. Paste it here and select a file. Let me hit the upload button. Okay, it is working as expected. I'll enter one more time. And I'll enter the same title. Hit the button. Unfortunately, it's not working as expected. It seems that only the first row in the table matches the slug that we entered. So to fix that, let's jump back to the getSlug method. And here, let's add in the second argument a rejects for regular expression. Then, in the third argument, let's make the slug as a rejects pattern. We add in the beginning a caret character. Then at the end, we add parentheses and a question mark, which means matches 0 or 1 occurrence of the regular expression. Then, inside here, we add a dash, square bracket, 0, -9. So this query means, find an image in the images table where the slug column matches with the slug that we specified, whether it has dash followed by a number or not. If we give this a save, back to the browser and reload. Enter the same title, choose an image, then hit upload. Okay, now we have no error. And if we take a look in our database, here is the new image, and its slug end with the number 3. Okay, that's it. I'll see you in the next video. In this video, we're going to add to our application another feature that allows users to update their image details. So what we'll do here is to allow users to update anything, except the image file. We'll restrict them from replacing their old image file with new ones. Alright, let's open up the web.php file. Then define new routes for updating. Let's simply duplicate both of these routes. Change the first one to images, image, then edit. For this route, we'll be using edit method and giving it a name images.edit. Let's change the second one to use put method, then specify route argument. We'll be using the update method for this route and giving it a name, images.update. Okay, now let's go to our image controller. Then define the methods. Here we can simply duplicate these create and store methods definition. Change the first one to edit. It receives an argument, image, and we'll type hint it with image. Inside the method, we return a view, image.edit, and pass through the image instance. Next, let's change the second one to update. In the first argument, we add a new argument, image. Inside the method body, we replace this with image update. And last, we adjust the session message. Image has been updated successfully. Alright, let's navigate to Resources, Views, Image. And here, let's open the create_blade.php file. Then save it as a new file, and we call it edit.blade.php. Change the heading to Edit Image. Change the form action to Route, Images, Update, and pass in the image instance, or image ID. Now, as I mentioned before, users can only upload an image, but they cannot replace the old image file with the new one. So, they are allowed to update anything except the image file. That's why here we'll remove the ink type attribute from the form. And we'll also remove the file input shortly. For the HTTP put method, here we need to use method directive and specify the method name. Here, let's remove everything inside this div. And then we'll add an image element. Specify the src attribute with image, file URL. Let's set the title with image title. And let's also add the width attribute and set it to 400 pixels. Next, to fill the title input with the old image title, we can add in the second argument image title. So here in this form, we only have one input, a title. However, we may add another input in the future, maybe for a tag or something else. Last, let's replace the button's text with update. Alright, let's now provide an edit link in the image index. Here, let's add a div. Inside that, we'll add an edit link. Here, you could use the route images.edit and pass in the image ID. However, since I have defined this method that abstracts the route call, I'll try to be consistent with that. So here I'll call image edit route. Or maybe I can define a single method for some different routes. Here I'll say route edit. Let's open up the image model. Then here, let's define the route method. It receives two arguments. The first one is method, and the second one is key, with ID as default value. Now, inside the class, we return route images.method and pass in the second argument, this key. With the route method defined, let's switch back to edit blade PHP file. Then replace the action with image route update. Okay, let's give these a save and take a look. Here we have an edit link added to each image. Let me edit one image. Here I get 404 error. Let me see another image. We still get 404 error. So what's going on here? If you remember, we defined the implicit model binding in the route service provider file. So here we use the image parameter to get image by slug. To fix this, we can do a simple check. If the value is numeric, we find the image by ID. Let's give it a save and have a look. Okay, not it working as expected. Now, one last thing that we need to do is adjust the validation rules, because here in the edit form, uploading file is not required, but entering the title is required. So, let's go back to the image request. Here in the rules method, let's check the method that sends from the client. If the method is equal to put, we return an array that contains validation for the title, which is required. Alright, I think that's all we need. Let's give these a save and have a look. Here, if I make the title empty, then hit the update button. Here I get an error telling me that title is required. Now I'll update the image title. Then hit the update button. The image has been updated successfully. Let me verify if the upload image form is still working. It is still working just fine. Okay, I'll see you in the next video. At this point, we were able to upload images and give them a unique slug. However, if we update the image title, it will also change the slug column. We don't want that because it's not good for SEO. So, in this video, we'll see how to allow users to modify the image slug only once. Once the slug has been set, we cannot change that again. Also, we'll make the image published when the slug has been set. To do that, we'll move the slug logic from image request to the image model. And we'll utilize Eloquent Events. As noted in the Laravel official guide, Eloquent models dispatch several events, such as retrieved, creating, created, updating, updated, etc. When a new model is saved for the first time, the creating and created events will dispatch. The updated events will dispatch when an existing model is modified and the save method is called. Event names ending with ing are dispatched before any changes to the model are persisted, while events ending with ed are dispatched after the changes to the model are persisted. Alright, let's switch over to our editor. Then open up the image request. Let's cut this getSlug method declaration. Next, go to the getData method, then remove the getSlug method call, also the if statement. Now, let's open up the image model, paste the code, and make some adjustments. Firstly, we change the method accessor to public. Get rid of the argument, since we don't need that. We'll replace the title in the slug method with the title attribute of the current model. Since we're in the model scope, we can replace the class name with static. To utilize Eloquent Events, we can register closures that execute when various model events are dispatched. To do that, let's add the booted method. Inside that, we can handle the events. For this case, we'll be using the creating and updating events. Here, we check if the image title is not empty. We set the slug attribute by utilizing the getSlug method. Let's also modify the isPublished attribute to true. Before we handle updating events, let's make sure our app is still working as before. Actually, before we do that, let's open up the image controller. Then in the index method, let's call the published query scope as before. Let's give these a save and make sure we don't break our app. Okay, it's still working as expected. Now, let's handle the updating event. Let's duplicate these lines. Change the method to updating. Now, when updating the image, we need to add another condition, checking if the slug has not been set. By doing this, we set the slug only once. Alright, let's give it another save and have a look. I get another error. This should be image slug. Now, it's working as expected. Great. Okay, let's move on to the next video and see how to delete the existing images. In this video, we'll add another feature in our app that allows users to remove their images. Alright, let's open up the web.php file. Let's duplicate this route. Then change the route method to delete. Change the controller method to destroy. And then change the name to images.destroy. Next, let's open up the image controller. And here, we simply duplicate this update method. Let's change the name to destroy. Remove the second argument since we don't need that. Replace this line with image delete. Last, let's adjust the session message. Image has been removed successfully. Now, after the image is removed from the database, we also want to remove the associated file. To do that, let's open up the image model. Here in the booted method, let's handle the deleted event. Actually, it doesn't matter to remove the file associated with the image, before or after the image is removed from the database. For this case, I prefer to remove it after deleting the image. That's why I use the deleted. Inside the closure, we remove the file by calling the delete method from the storage facade and passing in the associated file. Alright, let's provide a delete button in the image index. Let's open the file. Here, after the edit link, let's add a form. Let's set the action attribute to image route destroy. And set the method to post. Let's also adjust the style to display inline to make the form sit after the link. Inside the form, we add the CSRF directive, then method directive with delete. After that, we add a submit button. It's going to be delete. And before we actually perform the deletion, let's add onClick and confirm the deletion by using the JavaScript confirm function. Alright, let's give these a save and have a look. Okay, here we see a delete button added on each image. Now let's click on the button. Here we get a confirmation dialog. I'll hit cancel. The image is still there. If I now hit the button one more time, before I hit the OK button, let me go to SQL Ace. So here's the file. And I'll see that in my editor. And here it is. Now I'll hit the OK button. OK, the image has been removed successfully. Let's verify if the associated file was also removed. OK, it was removed from storage.